All right, folks, hello and welcome to another episode of The Brice is Right. I'm your host with the most, the people's champ, Brandon Brice. And folks, we have an amazing show today. I want to bring on my friend, my guest, John Mozena, formerly with the Mackinac Center for Policy. He was the communications director, and now he's over the Center for Economic Accountability. That's right, folks. We're talking about the center to make sure people are supposed to be doing what they're supposed to be doing with whose money? Your money. John, welcome to The Brice is Right.
Thanks for having me back, Brandon.
So, John, there's so many issues going on in the world today. Folks are losing their minds. Literally, I don't even watch CNN anymore because literally people, the minute I turn on and I see Don Lemon, whatever his name is, he's talking about things that I'm sitting back and I'm asking, where is conservative talk radio? Fox News is even moving more liberal now. John, let me ask you this. The big issue right now is Biden's first 100 days. Where do we go from here? Let me ask you this. When you talk about the fact that off the rip, first week, Biden's coming in, slashing jobs, getting rid of the Keystone Pipeline, should we be concerned that the president doesn't realize we're in a pandemic? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't think anybody's actually surprised by anything that Biden's doing, given that, he's doing pretty much exactly what he said he was going to do, and he's doing exactly the kinds of things anybody expected him to do who's ever watched him or knows anything about the Democrats. Some of the first things he did were payoffs to big labor. Who got him elected? Who helped him win back sort of the industrial Midwest that Trump surprised everybody by winning in 2016? It was the labor unions, and he's paying those guys off with the Keystone Pipeline. He's paying them off with some of the changes he made at the National Labor Relations Board. People talked all the time about, oh my God, Trump did this and Trump was breaking norms, which, he did. But at the same time, one of the first things Joe Biden did was fire a guy that nobody's ever heard of. He's the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, because that's somebody who has power over the labor unions. And rather than letting him stick around, Trump let Obama's guy stick around for another year. Biden, one of the first things he did, literally one of the first things on the first day in office, he put his signature on a paper. They asked the guy to resign. The guy's like, no, I still got another year left on my schedule, and they fired him because he owes the union bosses and he's paying them off.
Here's what's so interesting about this whole situation of government. People were concerned that Hillary Clinton, the Trump folks are going to, go after Hillary and put her in jail. And the first thing that came off was literally, the first week, the president, talking about then former 45, said, we're not going to put her in jail or anything. We're going to move forward. I find it interesting that now, all of a sudden, there's this, we want to put Trump in jail. We want to end the Republican Party. We want to do all this stuff. Literally, we're talking about the fact that we've got a situation in Washington where people they're lost. Literally, you're talking about right now, we've got a situation where we've got the government that is literally cutting jobs at a time when folks are, when you talk about the American people, they're hurting, they're struggling. It seems like the Biden administration is almost out of touch. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, every administration, that these folks are not, their job in their minds is not to truly help the American people. It's to try to actually get reelected, and they think that the way that they're gonna get reelected is by paying off the people that got them elected in the first place. So, if you think that politicians are in this for the betterment of everybody else, there's folks out there who've got good intentions and all that sort of stuff, and that's fine. And I believe a lot of them try that. But the first and foremost, they want to get elected, and the first and foremost that Biden's going to pay off the people that got him there, and the way he's doing that is by killing that. And then I saw a thing from the Teamsters saying that the Teamsters were concerned about the environmental impact of the Keystone Pipeline. These guys driving around in their big diesel rigs are worried about the economic impact of an oil pipeline. Sorry.
Here's the thing that I called this because I said this is a return to the status quo in Washington. Washington is broken. You know, Donald Trump, whether you like the guy or not, shook up D.C. Some folks liked it, some people didn't. But now you're seeing a situation where you've got thousands of jobs that are going to be cut because they said, "Oh, the Keystone Pipeline, it's we don't need it at this time." Wait a minute, we're cutting jobs at a time when folks are struggling. It's not the right time. Now you write about this stuff, John, and let me ask you this real quick. When we look at the fact that okay, there's a couple things I like that Joe Biden did, and I'll give credit where credit's due. There's a removal from private prisons where now they're saying we don't want to be in the business of incarceration. Okay, that's great. But here's the catch. Trump was already doing that.
Well, and even worse, I mean, this goes again to what I was talking about, and like paying off the guys that got you there. Something like a little bit more than 8% of all prisoners in the U.S. are in private prisons. Mm-hmm. If you want to end mass incarceration, which I fully agree with, we put way too many people in prison to call ourselves a free country. Biden's like, okay, we want to end the profit motive for mass incarceration. Cool. You want to know who's got the big profit motive for mass incarceration? It's all the public sector unions who are the corrections officers and the police and everybody who runs the sort of whole prison pipeline state. It's the lawyers who are massive donors to the Democrats. If Biden's actually going to try to end mass incarceration, I wish him well and I'll support him in doing that. He's got to take on some of the key power holders in the Democratic Party for that. That's going to be really tough for him to do.
All right, you're watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world, streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, when they're not locking you up. Please subscribe. Call in. Getting the call-in numbers shortly. But, folks, we got two amazing guests here. We've got John Mozina, formerly with the Mackinac Center for Policy and now president and founder of the Center for Economic Accountability. And then joining me, just walked in, looking like a Jets fan, even though I'm wearing Lions colors, clearly.
Eastern Michigan.
We've got Eric Brown, Republican strategist here in Detroit. Eric, you have been on the grind when it comes to writing. You're angry. Wayne County needs to be held accountable. Your thoughts on Biden's first 100 days? I mean, are you pleased, or are we starting off with a president that's killing jobs, which we already knew, but that's killing jobs? Your thoughts?
Well, just like my co-guest just said, the situation, particularly as it relates to this notion about deprivatizing private prisons. First of all you're doing is making legal what was already illegal. And there's only 8% of federal prisons that will be impacted by this money that will no longer be going to them. But the key thing that people need to understand, he privatized, he gave them the opportunity to privatize with the 94 crime bill. Nobody want to talk about that, and that's why I am so, I wouldn't say angry. I'm just very disappointed in the black electorate, without a doubt.
Let's talk about the 94 crime bill. Folks, yes, we had a 94 crime bill that talked about 3 strikes. And this time you weren't out, you were locked up. The 94 crime bill stemmed out of the late 80s, early 90s. And Joe Biden was at the precipice of this, but you also had other African-American Democrats, one Republicans, Democrats who supported that bill. Now they want to walk away from it. Let me ask you this, Eric. I mean, you talk a lot about accountability. You talk a lot about, right now when you've got a situation where they're literally Susan Rice, who I thought would have made a pretty decent Secretary of State, is now, and I had to fact check this, Google this, she's the czar of racial equality. What is that?
The very fact that in 2021 we're still talking about racial equality is a joke. The one problem that I also have is that the 2020 election cycle was one of the biggest jokes in the world. People were too lazy to do any fact checking because had they did any fact checking, black people wouldn't have voted for Biden. But they were so fed up, many were so fed up with number 45, and many people don't want to say this. Biden is number 46 merely because of the fact of people being upset with 45 and COVID-19. Let's be real. COVID-19 got Biden elected.
Hold that thought, because this is interesting, John. I literally did a show last night on the Heat. Check it out. Owned by the Chinese. They own CGTV. It is a fact. But I'll take the show. Get to spread our message here. The Brice is right. But John, let me ask you this. When you hear the fact that people say on the left, oh, the economy was horrible last year. I mean, the facts say before COVID-19, we were at literally, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, around 3 to 4% unemployment, which was 6 to 7 points lower than we were under the Obama administration. Why don't people equate? I mean, why is there so much misinformation when it comes to the fact that before COVID-19, we had a great U.S. economy? Those are facts. Your thoughts?
I spend a lot of time, a lot of what I do on the day-to-day basis is try to explain economics to the average person. And I got the scars to show it. People don't understand economics. They don't understand basic principles of economics. I will say also, like, the idea, we all love to think of the president as this sort of like national daddy or national king figure. The amount that a president actually has to like change the economy, or that it's the president who's responsible for the economy going one way or the other is it's pretty big. Like Bill Clinton, we didn't have a great economy because Bill Clinton. We had a great economy because people invented the internet. Like, Bill Clinton lucked out for like the peace dividend of the Cold War ending, and then somebody inviting like Microsoft Office so every company could get rid of their rooms full of typists.
Here's the catch. I was glad you mentioned Bill Clinton and the internet. Bill Clinton, John F. Kennedy, these guys would have never made it in the era of social media.
Well, I mean, at the time, it'd be hard to believe that Bill Clinton would even get elected as a Democrat. I mean, can you imagine Elizabeth Warren running after Elizabeth Warren or AOC, what they'd be saying about Bill Clinton? The guy that signed welfare reform, guy that signed the Telecommunications Act in '96, like deregulating things.
It's so amazing to watch. And I'll be honest, I am giving Joe Biden, our president, our new president, 46, I'm giving him a chance. But when I read the headlines and I see that you're cutting jobs, you're literally giving money to nations that, one, don't like us, that's a fact, but two, what about folks here? We've got thousands of jobs that aren't coming back in Michigan. I want to ask you this, Eric. I mean, right now, when you hear the fact that this administration, in the first 2 weeks, we're not even done with February, they want to give $4 billion to Mexico. Now, here's the catch. They want to give $4 billion to Mexico, but they have not talked about the many small businesses that are folding, gone. They're not coming back. They're not talking about the crumbling infrastructure here in Michigan and in other cities. Why do you think that is? I mean, shouldn't that be concerning to somebody who may have voted for 46 to hear that, oh, by the way, the money's not going to you, it's going across the Rio Grande? Your thoughts?
The average voter is going to give him more passes than Randy Moss received throughout his football career. And it's gone.
It's gone.
It's very unfortunate because, let's be real, what he's talking about doing, if number 45 had did the same thing, I'm not big on compare analysis, but let's be real about the comparison and analysis. All these people say, let's give him a chance. From the moment number 45 announced, so many people said that they would not vote for him. So many people said that they will move out of the country. Last I checked, any travel agent, there were not a plethora of one-way tickets out of the country. So that was just talk. So now for someone to tell me to give him a chance, I have a record of being anti-Biden since 1988. So I've been consistent since 1988. I tell people about his past. I tell people about his past animus towards black people. But the average black person has this litmus test on who's a racist. So in the average mind of most, number 45 was more of a racist, so they could deal with 46 because he wasn't as mean to black people. Even though he made comments about not wanting his kids to go to school in the country, in a urban jungle, he was a supporter of segregationism. So it's like, come on, you can't have it both ways. But just because you like him you want to give him a pass and ask others to give him a pass, but when the shoe was on the other foot, no one was willing to give number 45.
Now, not to steal your interview here, Brandon, but you can't have this discussion about Biden and his policies, and especially when it comes to crime, and not talk about Kamala Harris and her record in California.
So here's what's interesting. And actually, Mark, wait, hold that thought. Mark Levin, yes, the Mark Levin in New York or D.C. or wherever he is, actually gave me a shout out the other day. He said he stole my phrase. Mark, if you're out there, I'm coming for my phrase or my check. He said he called it the lock a brother up ticket. That's what it was. And when I said that, folks were livid. They said, "Oh, Brandon, how can you say that?" Oh. I said, look at the facts. Folks, look at the facts. I want to ask you this, Eric. Because, John, this is interesting. And we're going to take a quick break. WJZZ, Cool TV, chime in. I want to hear from you. We're talking about Biden's first 100 days. Folks, we cannot allow the president to get a pass. We've got to hold him accountable. I want to move on to this topic. Let's bring it back home. Let's talk about Flint. I find it interesting. I watched a movie called Roger and Me, which is based in 1989. It was one of Michael Moore's first docuseries, or whatever you want to call it. And it was about the reason that GM left Flint. And they talked about how bad the water was in 1989. John, why are they blaming? Now, let me be very clear on this. Should the governor have some blame? Absolutely. Folks, I'm saying it here. Somebody needs to be held accountable. But why is the mayor of Flint, former last few mayors, and the city council, former last few city councils, why aren't they being held accountable for 30 years of bad water? When you turn the faucet and your water is brown, folks, there's a problem here.
Yeah, the way that Rick Snyder became the villain in Flint, and I agree with you, he and his administration share some level of responsibility for it, but the way he became the villain was the result of a very specific, intentional, and planned PR campaign by the Democratic activists. And if you talk to folks, as I have done, who are sort of professional Democrats in that world, party people, union people, they'll admit that, yeah, it was an attempt to try to hang Flint around the neck of a guy who at the time, remember, before Flint, Rick Snyder was a pretty popular governor.
Rick Snyder
respected the fact that even if you didn't necessarily love everything he did, that you could trust him to do what he said, that he was like nerdy and he was trying to stay out of politics as much as he could. He was sometimes, when he was done, I sort of joked that as a politician, he was a great CPA, and as a CPA, is a great politician. But the man was pretty respected. And at the time, we were going into a presidential election cycle, and they managed to kneecap a popular Republican governor right as that was happening. So what happened was people don't talk about the fact that one of the single biggest triggers for the state declaring the emergency in Flint was that the city council and mayor of Flint were raiding the water and sewer fund for millions of dollars a year, and the state caught them doing it and said, you can't do that.
$900,000 a month.
So hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. That's sure going to fixing the pipes. They were taking and running other stuff.
So here's the issue. There's a couple things here. One, I believe that if Flint had not impacted Snyder could have been a VP candidate, because the man, you want to give Duggan all this credit, great. But the man, Rick Snyder, yes, the nerd, whatever you want to call him, was responsible, one of the biggest factors, for turning Michigan around. You can't deny it, folks. Look at the facts. So this is interesting. And Eric, I want to ask you this. Why does Flint keep voting in the same people when for the last 30 years it's been the same? I've actually talked to people from Flint. They've called in. I said, was there ever a time that Flint was this amazing, great city? And they said, well, the people are great, but we've had challenges since the 80s. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Why is it an issue now as opposed to, and speaking of that, what is the current administration doing to fix it?
They're doing absolutely nothing. And then you have a situation in 2016. You had a presidential candidate that raised hell about Flint, got them to have a debate in Flint. But as much as she made all this talk about the Flint water crisis, this was on top of a president at the time who faked drinking water in Flint. She left the city without even leaving a damn dime or a bottle of water. and they still voted for her. So I mean, so that's insanity at the highest level. It just kills me how the blame game is always played. And like John said, Flint was a matter of following the money. Had people paid attention and followed the money, it would have been shown that the elected officials failed Flint, not Rick Snyder.
Why?
Rick Snyder didn't build that water plant. The people of the city of Flint ran that water plant.
Explain this to me. Explain this to me. I am sick and tired of presidential candidates or presidents or prime ministers, whatever you want to call them, leaders saying, "Oh, you know what? Let me borrow this for a minute. This is the water. It's safe to drink. Go ahead and drink it and vote for me." Or right now, where they're getting the vaccines and the shot, they said, "Oh, look at me. I am the vice president or the president. I got the shot. You should too." Folks, they're politicians.
Right.
They're trying to win your vote. Why is that? Eric, I want to bring it back to you, man. This is interesting when you hear issues around Flint and you look at the fact that now, you've got a situation where, and this was concerning, going back to Biden's first 100 days, where in 2020, presidential debates, Joe Biden clearly said, this man, talking about the former president, Trump, this man has no plan. As of 2 weeks, Joe Biden says there's nothing he believes we can do to resolve the virus. Wait a minute. Isn't that kind of the same thing you said about the last guy? Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's, the fact that Biden said, we're going to have 100 million vaccinations in the first 100 days. The week he took office, the country was doing like 960,000 vaccinations a day, I think. Just a touch under the 1 million a day. You need to get 100 million vaccinations in 100 days. And they came in saying, there was no plan. We couldn't even believe how bad the plan was. Well, if your plan going into this was to do 1 million vaccinations a day and you showed up and they were doing 960,000, clearly it doesn't mean that they didn't have a plan. Clearly somebody had a plan and clearly something was going right. Now, could they have done more? Probably. Is there improvements the Biden administration could make? I don't know. It's been a long time since I did public health stuff for a living. But to be able to say there's no plan when they were 96% of the way to what you had said, what you had promised voters your brilliance was going to be able to accomplish, then something's going right there and you're not telling the truth about it.
I'll tell you, John, and I'm saying this because, and let me be very clear, folks, because I don't want folks calling the show, sending hate mail to me, you talk about my president, all this other stuff. I want to see the president succeed. Yes, folks, I'm saying it here. I want to see the president succeed because if he succeeds, we all succeed. But the other thing is, and Erica, I'll get your point. I don't think the administration. I think I think Joe Biden came in day one and said, SHIT, this is serious, more serious than I thought. And now he's got to govern.
It's no different than the city of Detroit during the Mike Duggan first administration. The bar was so low after the bankruptcy that it didn't take much to impress people come 2017 and 4 years later for a re-election, even though this guy would not be a two-term president. He will be a one-term president. And I raise your prediction on who will be there in
the crystal ball.
Your crystal ball prediction. I think it's going to be Nikki Haley and the current vice president. Nikki Haley will be the first woman president come 2024. But again, the bar is so low right now that he could pass gas and say, "Excuse me," and people think he did some superlative. That's just how sad it is right now. He should have never. I mean, it just kills me that the guy was a status quo, 47-year politician. What has he done of significance that makes people think that he's going to do anything over the next 4 years?
He ran with the first black president. He ran with Obama. That's his claim to fame.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a guy who's been running for president for 35 years, hadn't gotten a single delegate. Even the Democrats, there wasn't a single. He didn't get a single Democratic convention delegate. All the 35 years of primaries he ran it because he was a lightweight. He was a guy who sort of tacked slightly to the left of middle of the Democratic Party. He took steps like the crime bill and whatnot when he was trying to build like a national brand. But I mean, he was the guy the Onion was mocking for years, like the creepy Uncle Joe. He was a national punchline, but he was a Democrat who was willing to say, "I'm not a socialist," which was probably a good idea. And he looked safe and kind of boring, and frankly everybody was so exhausted. They're like, yes, I like the idea of a president who's gonna maybe take some naps here and there, and I'm not gonna have to wake up every morning and hear the words on the news. This morning the president on Twitter, and then we're all going, oh my God, what do you say now?
I mean, he never got more than 2% of the popular vote in 1988 or 2008. Now all of a sudden he's an $8 million vote.
Let me ask you this, John, because you bring up a very interesting point, and I'm just going to ask you straight up, because that's what we do on the Brice is Right. We're straight up. Is the Democratic Party right now being ran by progressives and socialists, or are there still centrists that have influence and power in that party?
Oh, no, there's absolutely still centrists that have influence and power. Follow the money again. Look at who's giving them the money. It's not the radical left. It's the unions. It's the trial lawyers. It's Wall Street. The funny thing is everybody's like, oh, my God, Wall Street's all these Republican whatever. Look at the money. Wall Street these days is way more going towards, Goldman Sachs and the like are supporting. Democrats are not the party of the little guy. Democrats are the party of just slightly different flavors of big business and big labor, which again is big business. If anything, here in Detroit, we've seen that with the UAW corruption scandals. There's big business and big money to be made in the world of labor there.
Eric, let me ask you this, and before we do, I got to call my call numbers. We got to pay the bills. Join the conversation. 313-355-6018. The Brice is Right. Real news, real people, straight to the point. I'm Brandon Brice, and folks, I want to also announce my two guests here. John Mozina, formerly of the Mackinac Center, founder of the Center for Economic Accountability. That's right, watching the watchdog to make sure the right people are doing what's right with your money. And Eric Brown, Republican strategist in the great state of Michigan. Let me ask you guys this. I want to segue a little bit. I want to get into, we talked about this last week, but I want to get into this Twitter social media conversation, because this is scary. Eric, I'll ask you first. The MyPillow guy, I never have owned a MyPillow for you folks. I heard it's good for your back, but I've never owned one. But the guy was literally shut down by Kohl's, Lowe's, and Toes and all those other companies because of his support for the president. Now, I was on social media and got blasted when I said, so you're telling me in 2021 folks can't have an opinion? And literally folks said, oh, it's hate speech, it's racist, oh. Let me ask you this, Eric. Is freedom of speech or your own opinion, is it still acceptable in the workplace?
Well, it should be acceptable in the workplace. It is not, unfortunately, because people get into conversations that take it to another level that may result in fisticuffs and putting your job at jeopardy. But you can't, Twitter, Facebook, they're all private companies, but you still cannot stifle someone's speech. It's a social media site. Anyone that goes on social media, be it TikTok, some of the crap you see on there, Twitter, Facebook, some of the other social media sites, it is a free-for-all. So just because someone says something in support of the person that so many people do not like, I mean, it's ridiculous to mute their voices. I mean, even, the number, I'm not a fan of number 45, no way, shape, or form. But to even mute his voice now, which was muted prior to that Save America rally. I mean, he said some things he obviously should not have said. But at the end of the day, you can't blame him for people that drink poisonous Kool-Aid. Anyone blame David Koresh for all those that drink this Kool-Aid down in Texas?
John, let me ask you this. I mean, right now you've got Twitter's president that said essentially he's afraid we may have walked down a slippery slope. I mean, you've got the Mexican prime minister that said, hey, the president shouldn't be censored. The German chancellor, who's no fan of 45, said, hey, this is a problem. Are we starting to see more world leaders come to say, hey, regardless of how crazy someone sounds, their voice still should be protected? Your thoughts?
See, I'm a free speech absolutist, which means I think that Twitter has the absolute right to decide what kind of opinions and what kind of people it can have on its platform, just the same as you can with your show, or JZZ could have with the station, or so the great analogy I heard somebody said, Twitter's a baker and Trump's a gay wedding cake. I mean, if we think that someone should have the right to refuse like I said, to decorate the cake for the same-sex marriage because it was opposed to the religious views, that that's just Twitter at another level. Now, is it a good business idea? I think that they're making a business decision, and I think they're going to find out the degree to whether or not people agree with that business decision. Are their customers going to keep agreeing with that? With the MyPillow guy, is that going to scare off advertisers or whatever? But I think that the problem is that the only alternative to that idea is that we put somebody else in charge of making those decisions. Somebody who isn't the host of the show or the owner of the station or the president of Twitter. And if there's anybody who should be deciding what goes on Twitter, it should be the people who own and run Twitter, not some government regulator. And that's the other option, because as soon as that happens, it becomes, people fighting to get elected so that they can also decide who's in charge of the FCC's office of who gets banned on Twitter or not.
Eric, let me hold on real quick, because it's going to turn into that question, Eric. Let me ask you this. Flat out, do people have a right to say stupid things and to be idiotic in this country? Yes or no?
Yeah, they do it in the workplace. You have CEOs, you have managers, directors, vice presidents. They do it. So the FCC also regulate radio stations.
Not this one.
Well, I'm just saying.
Not this one.
Podcasts
Free
get
speech.
a different push from them. Same with other stations that you're on. But at the end of the day, they can come in and say that you're playing music. You should be paying royalties to a person. You're paying them music as an intro or outro to your show. When it comes to Facebook and Twitter, particularly Facebook, since a lot of people feel that Facebook was used as a conduit for the Russians doing whatever they did allegedly in 2016. So now, you are allowing someone to steal information from your subscribers, but at the same time, you're muting someone's voice based on you not liking what they have to say. I mean, you can't have it both ways. That's what Mark Zuckerberg is doing.
So Uncle Mark, I call him Uncle Mark. He's put me in jail a couple times, and that's okay. I just got let out a couple days ago. You got put out. You got put out. I got put out. Hey, wait, we're Facebook felons. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But there's interesting. This is interesting because now we're talking about the fact that, and this is scary stuff. And folks, if you're listening, tune in. When I get my call numbers back, tune in, because I want to hear from you, because this is scary stuff where literally big tech, that means Twitter, social media, Parler, Snapchat, TikTok, TokTik, whatever you want to call it, they're saying if they don't agree with you, they're shutting you down. They're cutting you off. They're pulling a rug from up under you. I don't think it's right. We need to fight back. 313-355-6018. The Brice is right. So folks, so let me ask you this, John. Right now, we've talked about Biden's first 100 days. We've talked about the fact that Flint has been an issue for 30 years, and all of a sudden it's an issue. Going back to Flint real quick, you talked about it being political coming out of the AG's office. What do you think is going to happen next? Because now you've got a governor who literally has been out of office for, I think, almost 2 years now. You got folks who are still ill-served, not served in Flint. Where do we go from here? And what precedents does this make for environmental issues? Because I'm going to tell you something, Eric, John. I think Flint was the icing on the top. And I think when you start digging, there are Flints all around the nation.
Oh, yeah.
Not just here in Michigan.
No, I'm talking from like vague memory here, so I don't claim to expertise, but I remember seeing stuff talking about the degree to which lead levels that they saw in Flint are seen regularly in Detroit and other suburban communities. That it's a function more often of just like old pipes and whatnot rather than any particular public policy failure. and it's you talked about like what happens next with an indicted governor. It really is. You talked a while back about how people are saying, lock her up with Hillary, and now they want to indict Trump, and now we've got this. I really dislike the idea. I think it's very, very, very dangerous for us as a country to be falling into this habit of indicting and using the law, the criminal law, against politicians who did stuff we didn't like. Ironically, I say that on the week or two after Kwame Kilpatrick got out of jail. But the idea that you should be like trying to put your political opponents in jail by drumming up policy decisions as criminal things, that to me is really, that's some like banana republic, third world dictator stuff that I don't know how we come back from that, because that makes good people that much less likely to run for office, and it really makes it like, okay, well, if it's either I win the election or I go to jail, people are gonna do even worse stuff to win the election.
Hold that thought, folks. We're gonna take a quick break. We gotta pay the bills. Hold up. We're gonna take a quick break. I'm getting my folks are waving their hands. We'll take 2 minutes. We'll come back. I want to finish on that topic and get on textual sexual. Kwame Kilpatrick is out. He's out of office. And folks, what will he do next when we return on The Price is Right? All right, folks, we are back on. Not sure what happened, but folks, maybe the Russians are coming after us and taking us out. I don't know.
You're getting deplatformed.
Right. Maybe Twitter is trying to censor me, but I want to go right back into this conversation on former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick. He's out, and let me say this. I thought, the fact is, the mayor did some things that he should have went to prison for. Okay, we all know that. We agree. But 28 years, hell, Charles Manson didn't get 28 years. Well, actually, he did. But other folks in that boat, serial killers don't get that time. The time was too much, and it should not. It was too extensive for what he did. And, folks, there are other people who have committed crimes similar that don't get that time. And so I'm glad he's out, regardless of what that is. But I want to ask you, I want to go right into you, Eric. Right now, do you think that there is still a political career in the future for former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick? Yes or no?
Well, yes, there is. But let me also contest on the fact that I was at the trial. I was there doing jury selection. I was there doing the trial. I was there doing the verdict. I was there to talk to the jurors after he was convicted. He got the minimum amount of time for according to the sentencing guidelines, he got the minimum amount of time for every crime. I think it was 14 or 16 convictions. So when people say he got too much time, he didn't. I was there. And I tell people all the time, go back and read the transcripts. And I also tell them this. One juror said it best. Black female from Detroit. She said, I voted for this man twice. I believed in him. I trusted him. What I learned while I was a juror on this trial made me sick to my stomach. The sentence was just. The conviction was just. And she was a juror.
Let me ask you this, John. As someone, and this is interesting because if there's any, if we get into the nuts and bolts of why the former mayor was indicted and went to prison, when we talk about the money, this is what your organization does. When you talk about fiscal accountability, what actually happened? So our listeners can actually know why the mayor actually went to jail. Some people said, "Oh, he went to jail because it was discrimination and all this stuff." Why was the mayor incarcerated in the first place? Your thoughts?
He went to jail because he was a crook. I mean, let's not to put too fine a point on it. It's interesting. You talk about the length of the sentence. There was a guy down in Cleveland, a county commissioner, white guy, Cuyahoga County down there, a guy named Jimmy DeMora, who had run basically the same kind of scam of pay to play, where if you wanted to do anything with the city, if you wanted any of the city's money or any of the city's business, you had to go make a donation to like his family or his friends or whatever.
We don't call it donation. We call it a love offering.
Well, he got 28 years as well. So like the closest example of some other guy in that same position as Kilpatrick got exactly the same amount of time, and in fact that was almost, I think, intentional. The judge said was used it as an example for what it was. But basically, what happened was just that if you wanted to do business with the city, or if that you had to go make a deposit first before they'd talk to you at the Kilpatrick Family Foundation. This is all that they were saying. I don't know this all personally. And then all the deals, a lot of money that was going into the Detroit Water Department, which let's not forget, that was the water department that was sending the water up to Flint in the first place that caused this whole problem. That he was funneling all those deals to his buddy Bobby Ferguson, who's still in prison and probably will be for a while because he didn't have his nice friends in Trump's ear as Kilpatrick did. So basically what happened was Kwame Kilpatrick either cost the people of Detroit and surrounding communities who use the water department money that he made sure went into his friend's pocket, and his friend split the money with him on the back end, or he provided less good, less fair government services to the people of Detroit so that he and his family could profit. Again, same sort of thing. His dad's still in prison as far as I know. I mean, maybe he's out, but he was in prison for a while. So, anybody who actually cares about the well-being of the people of Detroit should be mad at Kwame Kilpatrick because he wasn't acting as mayor as if he did. He was acting as he cared more about his own well-being than the well-being of the people of the city, and you can't deny that. That's why he went to prison for that long.
Eric John said something very interesting when he talked about the fact that, let's face it, I mean, the mayor's mom was a congresswoman. Dad was pretty much the deputy county exec. He had some juice, and that got him out. Why do you think it looks like, Uncle Bobby may not be getting out anytime soon?
Well, without a doubt, any commutation request or pardoning request should have been a package deal. They were a team. And what you saw in those that were fighting for him, they had a self-interest. They had a self-interest, and it's points that they are trying to get from the particularly predominantly black electorate in the future, because a lot of people felt, as you stated, that he got too much time, all this and that, and he could run again as early as this year. There was an opportunity for him to run for a federal seat. But
here's what's interesting. Could he win? I mean, do you think today, if Kwame Kilpatrick came out and said, Detroit, I'm back and I'm running for mayor, vote for me, do you think he would win?
I don't have Marianitis or Kwame-itis, so he wouldn't get my vote.
Marianitis.
He wouldn't get my vote. So
at least he'd have money coming in. He could pay back the city the millions of dollars he owes in restitution.
Right, so it's unfortunate that there's a likelihood he would get a lot of votes. Would he win? Depends on what seat he's running for, but he would get a lot of votes. So next year, you have this year the situation with the Detroit might lose a congressional seat. Next year, it'll be a battle between Do-Nothing Lawrence and Loudmouth Khalid. He can sneak in and win that seat.
So here's what's interesting. First of all, I don't think he's coming back. I wouldn't come back. But here's what's interesting is that, and I throw this out, folks. Call in if you got the dial-in number when it comes back up. I want to hear from you folks who are listening, and you two here, is I'm not sure that I think he still's got a shot. I mean, I think people like to there we go, 313-355-6018. The Brice is right. I want to hear from you. Do you think Kwame Kilpatrick could win if he jumped in a race? They're saying he can't run for mayor, but he could run for Congress. Do you believe that? Right? I think people like comeback stories. That's what America is. We are a one big comeback story. And I think tomorrow, if the mayor said, I'm healed, baby Jesus, I'm healed, and I'm decided to run for Congress, and this time I won't take your money, I think folks would vote for him.
Oh yeah, they would vote for him. They would vote for him, and the district that he would be running in would be predominantly black, predominantly Democrat, and you talked about a comeback story and all this and that. People love, even though they will forget he's a criminal, as John so eloquently stated, they will forget he's a criminal, and they will vote for him. And
John, let me ask you this: do you believe, because this comes even back to some of the other elected officials? I remember I was in New York when Charlie Rangel was up on some charges, and he basically said, "My people vote me in, not you." Talking to other members of Congress. Do you agree with that? Do you think that if the people want to put in a crook, should they have the right to do that?
The old idea that, I forget who it was, maybe it was Mark Twain, that said, the American people get the government they deserve, and they deserve to get it good and hard. Like, it's. I would not be surprised in the slightest if Kwame ran for Congress, like you said, in a complicated political environment. And on top of that, on top of losing a district, let's not forget that all of a sudden there's going to be the redistricting commission, where the lines are going to be different. We don't know what those districts are going to look like, so that's a whole other issue on top of that. I wouldn't be surprised. Like I said, I was living in Maryland when Marion Barry was running again, so that was an interesting experience.
She set me up.
Oh yeah,
she set me up.
So I mean. Does they have? I mean, people have the right to get the government they want. I'm not the one to say that people shouldn't give folks a second chance. But on the other hand, I also had Brian Banks as a state representative, so I'm a little soured on giving people redemption opportunities, because after maybe your 8th felony, that's not a good idea.
So Brian,
he's still popular with you.
Wait, hold on. So Brian, if you're listening, we're not talking about you, but I do want you to come on the show because I want to get your side of the story. I always give people the opportunity to hear both sides. So you mentioned real quick redistricting. Which seat? I mean, it's been reported that we're going to lose maybe 1 or 2 seats. Let's start off with you, John. Which seats do you think are going to disappear? Your thoughts?
I haven't the foggiest idea. It all comes down to the fact that this redistricting commission is theoretically going to be nonpartisan. And there's going to be all types of games played with that.
Is there ever a time where you're really and John, I wanted to ask you this real quick, and then Eric, I'll bring you in. Are things ever truly nonpartisan?
Well, I mean, I theoretically qualify could qualify as an independent member of the voting commission, of the redistricting commission. I'm actually not a member of either party. I don't even consider myself a member of either party. I'm more libertarian than anything else. And I was talking to a very lefty friend about this, and he's like, oh my God, you were a vice president at the Mackinac Center. You're not nonpartisan. I'm like, no, actually I am. It's so the idea that there's so many different games that can be played, and the idea that the redistricting commission is going to theoretically get made up of basically people who are so disconnected from politics that they don't even know anybody, basically. It can't be you, your family member, anybody who's running for office. It's just you're basically eliminating anybody who knows what the hell they're talking about. And
But Eric, how do we know that? I mean, are they doing background checks to actually analyze who these people know? I mean, Susie Sally Mae's brother could be, related to the House Speaker. I mean, how do they know?
I mean, everyone has an agenda at the end of the day. Even though the commission would be nonpartisan, the Republican Party has control on which districts will be kicked to the side, because they are in control in Lansing right now, in the House and the Senate. So they will ultimately be making a decision. The commission will be making a recommendation, and it's already being talked about that Detroit most likely will lose one of its 2, the 13th or the 14th, which is interesting enough because you had the 14th where you had, the 13th rather, where you had the chair of that district, who has been appointed to a commission seat in Wayne County, which is the most laughable, flawed system I've ever seen in my life. You had an election in November. A commissioner dies, this same director of the 13th Congressional District did not want to have an election to replace John Conyers, but he throws his hat in the ring for the position of commissioner in District 2. And it's amazing because he wouldn't have got elected to. I mean, the people would not have elected him, but he's fine with being appointed to something that he hypocritically did not want the people to have their voice heard when it came to John Conyers.
So this is interesting because, I call this, and I always talk about this when I talk about education reform, but I talked about this around what I call the dance of the lemons. It's almost like Wayne County is playing musical chairs with seats where no one runs for office anymore in Wayne County. It's, well, and let me say this, God rest our soul, people who pass, they get a pass, okay? They get a pass. But, for other folks, it's like, I'm going to appoint you here, and I'm going to move my friend here, and this person's going to step down and retire. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to slide you here. I mean, when do Wayne County residents actually get to vote? Actually get to participate in something we call politics?
Reminds me of some of Coleman Young's complaining about counties. He's kind of like, what the hell's like Judge Roy Bead going on kind of thing? What the hell's the county doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's laughable when I sit back and I say there are 15 Wayne County commissioners, 14 of them are Democrats,
right,
1 Republican. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, well, when are the special elections? And, I've asked this question. So, folks, I have put my money where my mouth is. I said, when is an actual election? Oh, it costs too much. I mean, come on.
And it doesn't because the cost of a special election, particularly in a district, is just for that district. It's not for countywide. And I think the cost was tabbed at like some $6,000. They waste that in eating. They
wasted that in the jail. The jail that was supposed to be made, and it's laughable. And we need more people in Wayne County government. Period.
And nobody's paying attention to it. Anyway.
That's
the other side of things. People might be paying attention to the city hall. People might be paying attention a little bit Lansing or the national level, but nobody's paying attention to what the Wayne County Commission is doing. I like to think reasonably smart, pretty engaged, politically guy. I honestly couldn't tell you who my Wayne County commissioner is because it doesn't matter to me. Because, frankly, it doesn't matter. My vote isn't going to elect him anyway.
No one knows. Here's the catch, and Eric, I'm gonna bring you in on this one. Here's the catch: their meetings oftentimes aren't televised. No one knows. I mean, it's almost like they're like the secret commission because no one knows what they're doing, when they meet, what they talk about, other than what they tell you.
They meet during work hours.
And so, I mean, to me, it's like, what is going on in Wayne County? We got about 10 minutes left. Eric, let me ask you this. I want to go back to, this big tech issue. It's concerning to me because now, and I always say, regardless if you like the 45 or not, if they can do it to him, they can do it to you. Let me ask you this. What do you think? I mean, right now, you've got, big tech clearly is siding with the Democratic establishment. And let me be very clear, folks. I've got Democratic friends. I like Democrats. I don't mind supporting the right ones for certain seats. But there's clearly a faction that I don't even think some Democrats recognize nowadays. There is a progressive movement in this country, folks, and they don't want you to have a voice if you don't agree with them. I didn't say it. Big Tech said it. Your thoughts?
And what's interesting about Big Tech, particularly you look at Twitter, the previous president had something like 80 million followers. So if they were to get off Twitter and form another social media site, that's money being taken out of the pockets of Twitter.
But they already lost $5 billion in one day.
They would lose even more. So it's amazing that they are so willing to censor these individuals, and it's still amazing. I'm not a My Pillow person either. It's still amazing that he got censored for just being a friend or maybe making comments about he didn't see the insurrection as that big of a deal. But that's a personal. I'm not sure what he was looking at, but it was a big deal. So, but still, they have to find their balance again because they are definitely out of balance right now. How do they do that?
Let me ask this for you folks out there. First of all, the insurrection was awful. It was terrible. We don't do that in the United States, folks. We don't do that here. But who was the guy that looked like something out of Braveheart? Who was that guy?
He called himself the QAnon shaman.
The guy looked like a cue ball shortcake. I mean, who was this guy?
Well, he's under indictment now, so we'll find out more about him, I'm sure. It's one of those things where it's just like...
Call William Wallace! Call William Wallace!
Well, he wanted to be other. He wanted to be on camera. He wanted to be the face of things, and guess what?
Then go to Hollywood. Don't storm the Capitol.
There you go. No, see, when you talk about the big tech stuff, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I also look at it from the standpoint of, I sort of grew up. I was involved in the internet before, like, everybody found out about it, and I've been involved with tech stuff. Like, the speed with which, like, companies and platforms and channels and services and everything, like, rise and fall. Remember when, like, oh my God, like, Yahoo's going to be the most important thing, and oh my God, Microsoft's going to run our lives, and oh, the portals are going to be this, and like, everybody's like, oh, Facebook runs everything. Like, I got a 16-year-old son. He's never been on Facebook in his life. None of his friends have ever touched Facebook. They all laugh at the idea of using Facebook. Like, Facebook's audience is getting as old as, like, the MyPillow guy, I think. So, like, I tend to think, I'm a free market guy, but I also think of that in this, like, the history of technology over the past couple decades are such that, like, somebody's going to come up with a better, cooler, different idea. Like, think of how fast TikTok grew. Think of how fast, like, WhatsApp and whatnot grew. And think of how few people, like, are going on Facebook now compared to what was. So I tend to think that's the kind of thing that like, free markets and innovation and people finding something cooler, better, more different. And maybe they're part of the practice of it, or part of the what goes into people making that decision is, I don't like the idea of people being able to tell these guys what to do. So
here's what's interesting. I find it interesting that, they don't talk about censoring dating apps. Have you heard that? I mean, folks are saying some wild stuff out here on Match.com and all that, and they don't talk about censorship there, but they talk about censorship on the private space. I want to ask you guys this. There's a commercial that I saw late one night. I was up doing work, reading, what most educated people do. And it had, and I had to scratch my eyes. I said, wait a minute, am I dreaming? It had Beelzebub, Satan, on a Match.com commercial. And I said to myself, what is going on here? Satan can get a date and some of my friends can. I mean, this is insane. What's going on? I said, listen, player, Beelzebub. I mean, but it goes to show you, 10 years ago, folks wouldn't even be, we wouldn't even be having this conversation because the church groups would be outraged. But now it's almost like things are going to get. We got a couple minutes left before we shut out, folks. If you're not listening, we're here with John Mozena of the formerly of the Mackinac Center for Policy, now founder and executive director of the Center for Economic Accountability, and we've got Republican strategist joining me, Eric Brown. Folks, we're coming down to the wire. We got a couple more minutes left before we shut down. I want to hear from you, 313-355-6018. You are watching WJZZ, the coolest station in the world. So cooler than a polar bear's toenails. Oh, hell. Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, Twitch, TikTok, and all the tick and all that stuff. We got a couple of minutes late. Guys, final thoughts on this. Eric, I'll start with you. Just final thoughts.
Well, first of all, the devil needs loves, too. So, sometimes you're dating the devil. Well, it's gonna
that's true too. That's true too.
It's going to be a very interesting 4 years. I think that people bought fool's gold, and they will see for themselves after 100 days.
All right.
Again, he has a very low bar that was set. His honeymoon period will probably extend all the way through maybe 2022.
All right, John Mozena, close us out, my friend.
Yeah, all I can say is watch what people are doing, not what they're saying. Whether it's president, mayor, governor, county commission, whatever. It's the difference between what people say matters to them and why they're why they're in office and why they're running for position and what they're actually doing is huge. And the nice thing is that a lot of these same social media channels and the like, Twitter and whatnot, make it possible more than ever before for somebody who's actually paying attention to actually find out, like, the difference between what people are saying and what they're doing. It's like, basketball players or whatever, they're saying, watch their hips, watch the ball, don't watch their feet, don't watch the head. You got to pay attention to what they're actually doing. And I think that the more people pay attention to what whether it's the Biden administration or the Whitman administration or the Duggan administration or Wayne County or whomever it might be, party aside, anywhere around the country where people actually pay attention to what they're doing and where the money's going and who's getting that money, the better off we're going to be, because folks are actually going to get held accountable.
All right, folks, you heard it here. This is The Brice is Right. I want to thank both of my guests for today's show, folks. Next Friday, we've got an amazing show, and guess what? I'm going to let you find out. I'm not going to tell you what it is. This is WJZZ Cool TV. I want to thank my sponsors or whoever is paying the bills. They don't tell me that. But I want to make sure that, we talk about the real stuff, real news, real people, straight to the point. The people's champ, Brandon Brice. The Brice is Right. As I always say, good luck